This painting was generated by an artificial intelligence. So was this one, and all of these. In fact, I spent the last few days generating more than 100 artworks in this new tool by Latitude, Voyage's AI Art Studio. And these are just some of the things I came up with. Today, I'm going to talk to you about my thought process behind generating art like this in AI Art Studio. What I do, what works, what doesn't work, and how to make the best art possible. Before I get into the video, I just want to say these have been a thrill to make, so if you end up liking it, make sure you subscribe to my channel. I'm only getting started here on YouTube. Anyway, into the video. First things first, I wanted to give you a very quick overview of the tool. So this here is AI Art Studio. This main page right now, again, this is early access type situation. This is just what it looks like now. Things are definitely subject to change, but this is the main gallery of the most recent published content in here. Some of these are mine, some of these are made by other people. But as you scroll through them, you can see and get inspiration on what is possible in this system. If you want to start generating, of course, up here in the top right, you see Create. And Create lets you pick from 3 different models. Most of the places online that I see, as far as other situations where you can do this, you really only have one model to work with. And I really like that Latitude and the team behind AI Art Studio here put it together so that we can try different models. And I imagine, my understanding is that they'll continue to introduce models as they become available and able to be licensed for their use. So we might see more and more things in this tab here as time goes on. This is just what is currently available. I imagine over time we'll see more. I am so excited about what is possible in here. So Disco Diffusion, let's talk a little bit about this one. Disco Diffusion is the one that I think is probably the most powerful in terms of landscapes and architecture, city scenes, that sort of thing. And I have just been having so much fun doing it using it because it always looks so much like a work of art. And that's what I think some of these, or these other two, don't quite have nailed in such a clear way, though VQGAN here is much better at creating a subject. So see here how there's like a bunny in the picture and things like that. So the idea of actually creating a thing that your artwork is focused on, it has a better understanding of objects and what they are compared to Disco Diffusion, whereas Disco Diffusion is really good at making something pretty and interesting. I'll show you a little bit more about that as we get into the actual artworks I've generated, but the last one here is Pixray. I haven't used this nearly as much because this is what you end up seeing in AI Dungeon 2D, and so I'm pretty used to what it's able to generate, and it's really just this like pixel art format that doesn't have quite as much depth and interest as some of the other models here. And so Disco Diffusion has been my main focus because the things it creates are absolutely gorgeous. So let's hop over here and take a look at my art. So here you have a public gallery. So these are the things that you've generated within AI Art Studio and clicked publish on. Things wouldn't show up here if you didn't click them, and so this is a drop down that you can expand and close. Very handy if you have tons and tons of art to jump all the way down to things that might have been recently generated. Right, so here is some of the things I've created. So I think this is actually a good example. So here I've been tagging my artwork so that it's pretty clear what the AI is going to create before it happens. The tags that I've been using tend to have square brackets around them, and I have the title of the artwork I create and then details that help add to the artwork so it creates something off of this. So this is a bee and flowers, and so bees swarm a giant flower meadow scene, and that's what's created here. So I imagine that it thought of this as one giant flower that everything is sitting in, or at least this whole like corner of the screen is that, and then behind it is a meadow. I added beautiful oil painting because I wanted it to be an oil painting, and Disco Diffusion tends to let things kind of be incomplete. It doesn't know that what it's creating has to look done and look good. So these two tags, I'll add beautiful or magnificent or majestic or something like that to kind of give some like power and beauty to what has been created. And this last tag here, 4K HD wallpaper, has such a powerful effect at convincing the AI to make something good and, high detail and just complete, right? So like, what would somebody use the wallpaper? Something that looks good and pretty. And so adding this tag in whatever format you end up using, we'll talk a little about format in a bit, but in whatever format you end up using is totally worth it. I've really enjoyed how these come together. Let's give you a little tour. Let's kind of start. So this is in order of when they're created, or backwards order. So this was the first one. So my last video included making this here. This is the one I published in my last video. Lucky Charms Reimagined. This is actually the VQGAN. The VQGANs, right? So it's this model right here, but it created something pretty cool. And I continued to mess around with this, and if we go through some of the things that I didn't end up publishing, I did try a few more ways to get something that I liked, but I didn't get as much fun as doing something like this. So coming here and just right out and saying, this is an oil painting of a windmill by the sea and a sailing ship in the background, this sort of thing looked really impressive to me because it seemed like a final artwork. And I don't know, that was kind of the fun thing about generating these for me. I was looking at the existing prompts in here, and this was like the format so many people were using. Starlit City, concept art. So Starlit City, that was just a made-up name I had. Concept art kind of gives it this vibe, and then trending on ArtStation, the style of Terraform Studios. These look really cool, and I like how they turned out, but I kind of see this as like not quite done. I don't know if that's clear to you. You see how like the bottom is a little muddy and all of these, and this is the sort of thing that this standard style of trending on ArtStation is a good start here. Also, I see that star. We might talk a little bit about that later, but yeah, so this trending on ArtStation we see a lot of. So ArtStation seems to be a database of artworks that people have made, and so if it's trending there, it must be like really pretty or really good. But adding my 4K HD wallpaper tag seems to be even better. As you continue to go here, I just have a few more of these nice scenes. So I've done some in 1080p. It costs more tokens, so I think it's 2 tokens to generate something that's 1920 by 1080, but often it's very worth it if you have a scene that you end up liking. Hellish Staircase Labyrinth, this is another, I gave a fake, so this artist doesn't exist, but I made one up and said Hellish Staircase Labyrinth and did that, and by attributing it to an artist, it did a similar thing as the wallpaper technique, but again, it didn't feel quite as viscerally interesting as some of the wallpapers I see later on. This is an orange tree related to a D&D campaign that I was playing, that sort of thing. Crystal Coffin is another one, a horror type scene. These are fun. I can't go through every single one of these, but of course, if you guys are interested on a certain artwork here, do let me know in the comments down below, because I can start thinking about what kind of videos to make, and maybe if there's a challenge, something that you've had trouble generating in AI Art Studio or using AI in general, I might be able to mess around with this and create something interesting on there. This is just kind of a tour and to talk about my experience within this system. So as you scroll through here, yeah, this one I think is probably my most popular within here. So things go by, and they don't go by for very long. But this Kraken and Lighthouse I riffed on after I'd started to come up with these tags and this format. I riffed on someone else's strategy they mentioned in the Discord of trying to get this like Kraken and Lighthouse scene to come together, and the one they had looked very oil paint-ish, And by going through like epic monsters, stormy seas, 4K wallpaper, dark fantasy, these tags that they throw on top of this prompt, let it generate something really amazing and had a lot of depth. So I think this was a really fun picture to show off, and I thought this turned out really well. The sea in the background, I think I showed this off in the intro of this video because just wow, right? Like the waves look so realistic. The lighthouse is a strange form. This isn't like how you would typically imagine a lighthouse, and that's kind of back to what this model is good at, disco diffusion. As far as like a clear subject and straight lines and symmetry, it really falls short. And so trying to think of like what you can generate in here, try to think of things that look like a blobby mess, because the one thing disco diffusion does really well is blobby mess. So if that's what you want out of something like a kraken, it can turn out really, really well. And I thought this is something that did. I can show you another underwater one. This is like I called Remains of the Titanic. And so I gave a title of the artwork and some tags, and that's where this came from, and it looked so realistic and cool. This high res, that was before I started doing 4K HD wallpaper. High res was something that kind of inspired me to try those out. I don't know if we see here, I might have done, yeah, this might have been my first 4K HD wallpaper, mechatronic on a battlefield, and that just turned out so well. As we continue on, I was trying to make the Glibba tree. I need a profile picture for this channel. The last one was generated in Pixray. So is that pixel art, and I want to kind of add to that and see if I can make a Glibba tree. I might do a tree robot or something like that too. I don't know exactly what I'll come up with, but eventually I will make a profile picture for this channel. Maybe I'll make a video out of doing that, but that's fun. A night scene in the mountains I thought turned out really well. This was for my sibling. They're doing a D&D campaign, and these turned out really well. And so this is like before and after the battle, kind of. It's not 100% accurate, but I don't need to go into too much detail. This one, again, I saw a lot of Atlantis-style things, and with like that bubble around them, and this model just did such a good job at that I wanted to try some myself. So I used my tags in my format, and colorful is a big, it almost always means rainbow. So if you put colorful, just expect so many colors, and I'm sure we'll see a few of those later on. Same thing here. I had colorful, vivid, ornate crystal coffin, right? So this is like decorated, and there's crystals, and it's all these sort of things, and they just look really, really good. Again, this is like so detailed as you look into this. Wow. And continuing through here, yeah, these some of these I did like gods for this D&D campaign that I wanted to show off. Yeah, Adonis. Let's see. So Supernova turned out well. So there might have been a few space scenes. Yeah, this is a nebula, an asteroid. I had done a bunch of these, and they turned out really, really good. And again, this was the format I had been using for a long time, and that seemed to be the best way to get something really detailed and interesting, is the title of my artwork and fantasy world, adventure, magical treasures, all that sort of thing. And I don't know, it just worked out so well. Emerald City, again, kind of like the Atlantis vibe. I want to do the like Wizard of Oz vibe, and so I did Emerald City in a bubble, and this came out pretty cool again. I think I spent more tokens to get in 1080p because I just wanted to have this, and it looked good. I did a 1080p version of the Kraken scene from a little earlier, and again, turned out so well. A little bit, I'm a little sad. I wanted a little bit more of that glowy, foggy light coming from the lighthouse, but I didn't think it was worth generating again because still, this is a really incredible scene. Let's see. Ooh, yes. Spaceship. Again, I had been playing around with a lot of those spaceship scene. Somebody in the Discord was trying to generate a spaceship and actually have it show up in the middle of the scene without using a link. So one of the things you can do when you generate something, so in Disco Diffusion, you can actually start with an image. So if you paste the link to an image URL in here, then it starts based on that image and then starts generating on top of that. If you want it to be pretty true to the image, you're going to need to skip steps, right? So Disco Diffusion starts in step 0 and starts like adding things on top of it. And the first step is, I think, just a blank screen, right? So step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and through 10 have not too large an effect on what happens. Like a total artwork by default is 250 steps. In 1080p, I tend to go to about 400, just for little details if you guys are wanting to try this out. But that starting with an image, I'd recommend skipping, depending on what you want from it, skipping much more than 10, maybe 50 or even like 75. You might be able to keep a lot more of the image. I haven't played too much with that because I just wanted to see the pure ability of this system. But as I continue here, someone started giving me advice. So from HD 4K wallpaper, I was reading that really square brackets don't mean anything to this model. So like GPT-3 and the models in AI Dungeon, they understand square brackets really well, but the AI model basically doesn't look at them when it's evaluating the text. And so commas and periods will actually do a better job at splitting things up and making them complete. One of the reasons I did it in this tag format for all of these, and I know this is getting pretty technical, so if you're not interested in that, I'm sorry, but it's fun for me to talk about anyhow, so hope you're still enjoying it, is basically that the more wordy a image was, let's just take a look at browse here and see some of these like pretty cool ones, right? Like these turn out pretty well, and it's kind of neat. But in the foreground, a refugee family huddles close to one another. Crimson, black sky is foreboding. In the background are an array of massive arcology cities. I don't mean to pick on this person. Sorry if this is you. Hi, Stern One. This looks good, right? It's a cool image here, but what you have is a refugee family, and they're like showing up in some strange corner and all of this. And so by starting off with just the title, right, it really sets up what this piece is for the AI, and it really looks at that like first area really well. I think putting in quotes also helps because it really justifies that as the most important aspect. And so setting up like this is like refugee family in a city, right? And if you put that in quotes first, you might actually get some of these things not just sporadically around, like what's happening up in the sky here. It didn't seem like these are, I guess are drone attacks, but there seems to be a refugee family up here too, right? So like drone attacks refugees, you know, and there's a way to do that, but then details about the city can come in tags later on. And I think using commas and periods are the way to do it, but all these extra words in the foreground, in the background, are an array of massive, right? Here, there's no content for the AI to actually play with. Maybe when it's looking at archaeological, it can, cities, it can see that they're massive cities, but the word city pretty clearly implies massive already. So the more you can take out of these and the more clear you can make them, because the AI only understands like these proper nouns and what they mean, and maybe some like very, very clear, like colorful adjectives. All these like filler words, RN, it'll just like confuse how things relate to one another. And so by splitting up the tags so that they generate in so Atheon at night, this is the name of my city, right? Landscape painting of a fantasy kingdom in the distance, right? So this is like a one sentence. Landscape painting is very useful to the AI. It knows what this is. So early on, this is, what is the scene? City at night. Well, it doesn't know it's a city yet, but Atheon, this is a word that it has to like give meaning to, right? So I want this to be like an interesting fantasy city. Again, happens to be from my D&D campaign, not the point. landscape painting of a fantasy kingdom, right? So fantasy kingdom, also a super useful word, in the distance, right? So we're not in it, we're looking at it. And making that very clear, I think, is important too. Sparkling night sky scene, right? So we want stars in the background. The word star, they tend to treat as this like 5-pointed star, right? I said I'd talk about this later, and here I am coming back to it, right? So you see just this like classic like children's book star, right? Or drawings of a star rather than like what a star actually looks like. So my word sparkling does a better job at getting a starry night than saying starry night does. Wide shot, again, I wanted to capture as much as possible, and I wanted to see the landscape. It understands like camera angles. So if you want to throw your camera angle in there, that's super useful to the AI because it can say, oh, I'm looking at it from this direction, or I'm showing this much more of what I'm looking at. And that's a really handy thing. Intricate castles, right? So like detailed, and towers, right? So I want castle and tower in here. And I think the later on that these come, the less things it focuses on them, though I tend to put like distinct style things, this like 4K HD wallpaper, just to make it feel complete. I tend to put that at the end because I think that's, at least I know the AI Dungeon, it focuses primarily what just happened, right? And so it'll look at that thing that comes last as much as well. But early on, I like all of this, and you generate something very cool. I actually like this example because right after it, I generated a realistic version of this, right? So a lot more realism in here. And so this is a moon scene, right? Or this is like a very similar scene to this, right? So this is Atheon at night painting, and this is Atheon at night realistic. And what I changed about this prompt, so you look at Atheon at night, this is a cinematic digital art for a fantasy kingdom in the distance, right? So the big change, right? So this is still a sparkling night sky, this is still a wide shot, this is still intricate castle and towers. Instead of being a painting, right, this is cinematic, right? So like from a movie, and it feels like it could be in a movie, digital art. And it's hard, it doesn't really know what you mean when you say realistic, right? Like that adjective can mean a lot of things. And so I would recommend taking it from the approach of why was the artwork created? And in your prompt, you should answer that question, right? So sometimes it's like, who is the artist? And I think that's how a lot of people have been answering that question is, oh, this person is an artist and they like making pretty things. And that's pretty good. But I think something like cinematic, like this is to advertise a movie, right? Like it gives a very clear indication of what this is for, and the AI can can search its database in that area to see what realistic in movie advertising actually means, right? So like a fantasy movie tends to have really intricate castles that look grand and epic, cool backgrounds, interesting colors, and well lit, and it actually lets the light like impact on the world, and it might have like lens blur and all those different things that make it a really interesting shot. And so all of that comes together to create a really interesting art. I tend to like my own stuff because I'm vain that way, but that's kind of the sort of things I've been thinking about to create as much as I possibly can. Opening to a wormhole turned out just gorgeous, and again, extremely colorful, and you get this like rainbow vibe, and then all looping into this like wormhole location. I don't know, this just looks so cool. But yeah, these are most of the completed artworks I have created, and I think they turned out really, really well. I hope you enjoyed watching these. I will quickly go through some of the things I haven't published just so you can see them. I'm trying to work on a library scene. They tend to have this like very blurry background on the bottom and very blurry top, or just like messy overall and not straight lines within it. I don't know. I'm still trying to get something I really like out of this, and it just hasn't happened yet. Onyx was asking me, or didn't really challenge me directly to like make a specific scene, but there was an image, I'll edit it in, that I wanted to replicate actually from this VQGAN, a subject, right? So this is something that's a lot harder to do, is to have something like this, like Squire sitting down and reading a book and focusing on that and also having a whole scene out of it. So doing some of these same techniques in the VQGAN model might actually give you a really good chance. I just haven't played around with it nearly as much, but some of these images that they've made have looked really, really cool. So as I'm just kind of scrolling through these for you, some of these are really interesting. It does have a lot of trouble with faces, right? So you look at these. I was trying this out for somebody else as well. I did get a dog face to kind of happen, but the rest of the painting just kind of turned into this mess. Ooh, this is funny. Yeah, so I tried to make a train, and it just kind of drooped on me. That turned out well, or it was funny. I tried all sorts of these different things. And there's like concept art without without 4K wallpaper. It just seems unfinished, right? Like normally all these tags like turned out well, but then when you add that, it just seems so much bigger and cooler. I stole this from somebody else, which is why I just like did a remix and I tried to make it 1080p. But I didn't feel comfortable like putting that on my page because this prompt was not mine. I just thought it was really, really neat. Yeah, these are fun. I tried a few of these like staircase things. This one was actually in VQGAN. I really think it does a good job. Like it makes these objects feel really volumetric, which I think is missing from a lot of the completed work in Disco Diffusion, right? It doesn't seem near like the shiny and smooth and just like, I don't know, it just looks a lot more, I like my word volumetric. I think that's the best way to describe it. But these things just look like real objects, and that, I don't know, the way the color and the light reflects, it just seems a lot more complete. But these are the things I tried to create. Again, as I started, things were not nearly as coherent, but over time I figured out how to make something more and more interesting, and things got better and better, and the sort of things I didn't publish are still pretty interesting attempts. I was going to show you this example. This was a kind of more standard prompt for that same bee painting I showed you early on in this video. Just a painting of a bunch of bees on a giant purple flower in the meadow. Doesn't have nearly the same ring to it as a completed, interesting, like high quality artwork, and just adding that like 4K wallpaper tag does a really good job at convincing the AI to make something just beautiful. I don't know. I've been filling this with advice, but I should let you go. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video because I had so much fun messing around with this system. Oh, abstract art, I didn't talk about it all, but turned out, I'm sorry, I'll let you go. I'll probably do another one of these, or we will try to generate art together, maybe on a live stream. But until then, I'll see you next time. Thank you guys so much for watching. Bye.